The air inside the county auction barn hung thick with the sour stench of wet hay and hopelessness. Dust motes swirled lazily in the shafts of afternoon light that pierced through cracks in the weathered wooden walls, illuminating the despair that clung to every rusted cage and frayed rope. The floorboards groaned underfoot, their protests drowned out by the murmur of bored spectators. Ranchers here for livestock, bargain hunters hoping to score cheap tools, and a few curious onlookers drawn by morbid fascination. Then the handlers dragged him in. The German shepherd stumbled on the lead, his once powerful frame now a gaunt silhouette of what he must have been. His coat, dull and patchy, bore the marks of neglect, scars that told silent stories of pain endured. But it was his eyes that struck like a physical blow, clouded over, milky blue, staring sightlessly ahead. A crude cardboard sign hung from his kennel. The words scrawled in hasty, uncaring script. Blind, useless. $10 starting bid. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. "Ain't worth the feed," snorted a man in a grease-stained cap, nudging his companion. "Bet he couldn't even find his own tail," another chuckled, shaking his head. The auctioneer, a grizzled man with a voice like gravel and a face that had seen too many hard winters, sighed and raised his gavel. "All right, folks, let's get this over with. Purebred German shepherd, trained, or so they say. Blind as a bat and about as useful. $10 gets him. Do I hear 10? Silence. Then, from the back of the barn, where the shadows pooled thickest, a voice cut through the noise like a blade. "I'll take him." The crowd turned as one. Liam Carter stood apart from the others, his presence quiet but undeniable. Tall, lean, with the kind of stillness that spoke of a man who had learned the hard way how to wait. His faded army jacket hung loosely over his frame, and the scars that peeked from beneath his sleeves whispered of battles fought and survived. His eyes, sharp, assessing, never left the dog. The auctioneer squinted. "You sure about that, son?" "He's blind. Can't herd, can't guard. Hell, can't even fetch your damn slippers." Liam didn't answer. His boots, worn and scuffed, the kind that had carried him through places most men wouldn't speak of, crushed the straw underfoot as he approached the kennel. The shepherd didn't lift his head, didn't growl, just stood there, breathing slow and shallow, as if the weight of the world had pressed him into the ground. Then Liam reached out. His fingers, calloused from years of gripping rifle stocks and dog leashes alike, brushed the fur between the shepherd's ears, and the dog flinched. Not the jerky recoil of an abused animal, not the snap of a trained attack dog, but something deeper, something older. A reflex buried so far down, it should have been forgotten. The crowd held its breath. For a heartbeat, the barn was silent. Then, the shepherd turned his head. Just a fraction. Just enough. His clouded eyes didn't focus, but his ears twitched, tilting toward Liam's voice like a compass finding north. And in that moment, Liam knew. This dog wasn't born blind. Someone had made him this way. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Well, you still want him?" Liam didn't look up. His hand stayed steady on the dog's neck, fingers tracing the faint ridge of a scar hidden beneath matted fur. A scar too precise to be an accident. Too deliberate to be anything but a message. "Yeah," Liam said softly. "I want him." He reached into his pocket and tossed a crumpled 20 onto the auction block. "Keep the change." As he led the shepherd away, the crowd murmured, already losing interest. Just another fool wasting money on a lost cause. But Liam knew better, because the dog walking beside him, slow, cautious, but willing, had just done something impossible. He'd recognized Liam's touch, and that meant he remembered. Remembered hands, remembered commands, remembered betrayal. The barn doors swung shut behind them, cutting off the noise, the laughter, the stench of cheap whiskey and cheaper dreams. Outside, the sunset painted the sky in blood and gold, and for the first time in what might have been years, the shepherd lifted his nose to the wind. Liam crouched beside him, studying those ruined eyes. "What did they do to you, boy?" The dog didn't answer. But somewhere, in the dark corners of whatever memory still lived behind that milky gaze, a soldier stirred. And the war wasn't over yet. The cabin creaked in the mountain wind, its old timbers groaning like tired bones. Moonlight sliced through the threadbare curtains, painting silver stripes across the wooden floor where Kaiser paced. Back and forth, his nails clicking a restless rhythm against the planks. Liam watched from the battered armchair, his coffee gone cold in his hands. He'd laid out blankets by the fireplace, even tried coaxing Kaiser with scraps of venison. But the dog wouldn't settle, wouldn't lie down, just kept circling the room, his milky eyes wide and unseeing, his shoulders twitching every time the wind rattled the windows. Post-traumatic stress, Liam thought. He'd seen it in soldiers. Now he was seeing it in a dog. Then, a coyote howled in the distance, its mournful cry spiraling through the pines. Kaiser froze. His ears swiveled forward like radar dishes. His nostrils flared. And then, impossibly, his clouded eyes locked onto the window. Not just staring at it, but through it, tracking something in the dark. Liam's mug hit the floor with a thud. Blind dogs don't do that. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. Then Kaiser whined, a sound so low and desperate it raised the hair on Liam's arms, and scrambled to the door, scratching at the wood like he could dig his way out. "Easy, boy," Liam murmured, kneeling beside him. But when he reached out, Kaiser flinched away, his entire body trembling. Not from fear, from focus. Like a soldier hearing gunfire in the distance. That's when Liam noticed the scar. It was dawn before Kaiser finally collapsed into an exhausted sleep, his ribs heaving. Liam took the opportunity to examine him properly. The warm water turned brown as it sluiced away months of grime, revealing old wounds, a jagged line along his flank, a divot in his shoulder that spoke of a bullet's kiss. But behind his left ear, Liam's fingers stilled. There, smaller than a dime, neat, surgical, a microchip removal scar. His throat went dry. Military dogs were chipped, all of them. But only one organization had the resources and the cruelty to carve one out. Blackthorn Security. The name sat like poison on his tongue. Private contractors. Asset retirement specialists. The kind of men who made problems disappear, dogs included. As if summoned by the thought, tires crunched on gravel outside. Liam moved to the window in time to see a black SUV rolling past his property. No headlights, no license plate. Just slow, predatory silence. Behind him, Kaiser woke with a snarl. The sound that ripped from the dog's throat wasn't a growl. It was a warning. The kind K9s only used when they scented danger. Kaiser stood rigid, his lips peeled back from teeth that had once been weapons, his blind eyes fixed unerringly on the road. The SUV paused. For one endless moment, the world held its breath. Then the engine revved, and the vehicle vanished into the trees. But not before Liam caught the insignia on its door. A thorned crown. Blackthorn's logo. Kaiser's growl faded into a whimper. He pressed against Liam's leg, his body shaking, his breath coming in ragged bursts. Not afraid. Angry. Liam sank his fingers into the dog's scruff, feeling the old muscle beneath. "They did this to you," he whispered. "Didn't they?" Kaiser didn't answer. But when another coyote howled, closer this time, the dog's head snapped up, his ears pricked, his ruined eyes seeing what no one else could. And Liam understood. Kaiser wasn't broken. He was waiting. The storm rolled in like judgment. Rain lashed the cabin walls in furious waves, while thunder shook the mountains with the force of artillery fire. Liam had fallen asleep in his armchair, His fingers still curled around a half-empty whiskey glass, Kaiser stretched at his feet. The dog had finally settled, or so he'd thought. Then the world exploded. The crash of shattering glass ripped Liam from sleep. Before his eyes could focus, before his brain could process, Kaiser was already moving. A black streak through the darkness, his growl vibrating the air like a live wire. Liam's combat instincts kicked in. He hit the floor just as another window shattered, glass raining down like diamond shards. The cabin's single lamp revealed a nightmare. Kaiser had a man pinned in the doorway, his powerful jaws clamped around the intruder's forearm, his teeth sinking deep enough to draw blood. The man's free hand clutched a pistol, its barrel glinting in the erratic lightning flashes. "Call him off!" the man spat, his face contorted in pain. His tactical gear bore the unmistakable insignia, a thorned crown over crossed rifles. Blackthorn Security. Liam didn't move, didn't blink. "Kaiser, hold!" The dog didn't release, but his growl deepened, his blind eyes fixed on the intruder's throat with terrifying precision. The Blackthorn operative sneered. "Should have known he'd remember our scent." Rainwater dripped from the man's gear, pooling on the floorboards like ink. Liam noted the suppressed pistol, the night vision goggles pushed up on his forehead. Professional equipment. A retrieval team. "He was one of yours," Liam said, his voice low. Calm. The kind of calm that comes before violence. "Was," the operative agreed, shifting just enough to make Kaiser's grip tighten. "Until he became a liability." Lightning flashed. In that stark blue-white instant, Liam saw three things. 1. The scar on the operative's neck, identical to Kaiser's. A chip removal mark. 2. The way Kaiser's ears twitched toward the trees outside. More than one intruder. 3. The truth. Ugly and undeniable. This wasn't just a retired dog. This was evidence. The operative smirked, reading Liam's realization. "You really think we'd just let a multi-million-dollar asset wander off? Especially one that saw what he saw?" Kaiser's growl hit a new frequency, a sound Liam had only heard once before, in a bombed-out village in Kandahar. The sound a military dog makes when it corners the enemy. Liam stepped closer. The storm howled around them, wind screaming through broken windows. "What did you do to him?" The operative laughed, a wet, choking sound with Kaiser's teeth at his throat. "We perfected him. Blind dogs can't identify targets in a lineup, can they?" A memory slammed into Liam. Kaiser's unnatural tracking of the coyote. His reaction to the SUV. Not blindness. Trained sensory deprivation. Blackthorn hadn't just discarded him. They'd rewired him. Something shattered outside. A branch? Or a boot? Kaiser's head snapped toward the sound. In that split-second distraction, the operative moved. Not for his gun, but for a syringe in his vest. Liam reacted on pure instinct. He lunged, grabbing the man's wrist just as the needle gleamed in the dark. They crashed to the floor, Kaiser snarling, the storm roaring, the syringe rolling toward the fireplace. The operative gasped as Liam's knee dug into his ribs. "You don't understand. That dog's not an animal. He's a witness. He was there when—" A gunshot cracked outside. Kaiser whirled toward the door as shadows moved on the porch. Not just one intruder. A team. The operative grinned, blood on his teeth. "Too late, handler. They'll burn this place down with you in it. Standard protocol for loose ends." Lightning flashed again. In that frozen moment, Liam saw Kaiser's posture shift. Ears flat, weight balanced, the way military dogs brace before breaching a door. Not running, preparing. Liam made a decision. He yanked the operative's pistol from its holster and pressed it to the man's temple. "Tell your team to stand down. Now." The operative's smile didn't waver. "Or what? You'll shoot me? That dog's the only killer here." As if on cue, Kaiser turned his sightless eyes toward the voice and smiled. The operative's blood ran cold. Outside, another gunshot. Closer. Liam leaned in, his whisper barely audible over the storm. "You're right. He is a killer. And you're the one who trained him." Somewhere in the dark, Kaiser began to growl. The operative's last words were lost in thunder. But Liam heard them. And in that moment, he understood exactly what Kaiser really was. Not a discarded weapon. A survivor. And survivors always fight back. The abandoned Blackthorn facility loomed out of the mountain fog like a graveyard of forgotten soldiers. Rusted chain-link fences sagged under the weight of coiled barbed wire, their metallic groans carried on the wind. The air smelled of damp concrete, stale urine, and something sharper, antiseptic, clinging to the back of Liam's throat like the ghost of a scream. Kaiser moved ahead of him, his nose working overtime, his ears twitching at sounds Liam couldn't hear. The dog's gait had changed since they'd left the cabin. Every muscle coiled with purpose, every step precise. Not the hesitant shuffle of a blind animal, but the calculated advance of a soldier returning to the battlefield. "Easy, boy," Liam whispered, his Glock heavy in his hand. Kaiser ignored him. The front gate hung open, its lock shattered. Fresh tire marks cut through the mud. Liam's pulse hammered against his ribs. They're still using this place. Then the wind shifted, carrying a new scent. Coppery and warm. Blood. Kaiser's entire body stiffened. A low whine escaped his throat as he lunged forward, pulling against the leash Liam had fastened as a precaution. "Kaiser, halt!" The command died as they rounded the corner. Cages, dozens of them, stacked like coffins against the facility's outer wall. Some held German shepherds, others Malinois, all military breeds, all bearing the same telltale signs. Missing eyes, scarred muzzles, patches of fur burned away by electrodes. One Malinois panted in the corner of its cage, its tongue lolling from a mouth missing half its teeth. Another shepherd lay motionless, its ribs visible beneath a coat matted with its own waste. But worst of all was the silence. No barking, no growling. Just the occasional whimper as the dogs pressed themselves against the backs of their cages, their bodies trembling with the memory of pain. Liam's stomach twisted. He'd seen war zones with more hope than this place. Kaiser made a sound Liam had never heard before, a strangled mix of rage and grief. Then, without warning, the dog moved. His teeth closed around the padlock of the nearest cage. Metal screeched as Kaiser wrenched his head sideways, his neck muscles straining. The lock held. "Kaiser, no!" A gunshot cracked the air. Concrete exploded inches from Liam's boot. He dove behind a stack of pallets as more shots rang out, the muzzle flashes lighting up the facility's second-story windows. Snipers. Kaiser vanished into the shadows. "Kaiser, higher!" Liam barked the German command without thinking. Nothing. Then, movement to his left. A Blackthorn operative rounded the corner, rifle raised. Liam fired twice. The man dropped. Chaos erupted. From somewhere in the maze of cages, a chorus of barks broke out. Weak at first, then gaining strength as Kaiser darted between the kennels, his presence igniting something in the other dogs. A Malinois threw itself against its cage door. A Rottweiler began chewing at its chains. Liam caught glimpses of Kaiser moving through the gunfire like a phantom, ducking, weaving, using the cages for cover. A sniper fired. Kaiser rolled, the bullet kicking up dirt where he'd been standing. Another shot. Kaiser leaped, his body twisting mid-air to avoid the round. He's tracking the muzzle flashes by sound, Liam realized, awe cutting through his fear. They trained him to dodge bullets. Then he saw it, a glint of sunlight on a rifle barrel protruding from a second-story window. A sniper, lining up a shot. On him. Liam froze. A black blur streaked across his vision. Kaiser hit him square in the chest, knocking him backward as the shot rang out. The impact drove the air from Liam's lungs. He landed hard, Kaiser's weight crushing him into the dirt. Warmth spread across his shirt. Not his blood. Kaiser's. The dog lay across his chest, his breathing ragged. A dark stain bloomed beneath his shoulder blade, soaking his fur. "No!" Liam rolled them over, his hands scrambling to assess the damage. The bullet had torn through muscle, just missing Kaiser's lung. The facility doors burst open. More operatives, more guns. Kaiser tried to rise, his legs trembling. Failed. Tried again. Liam pressed him down. "Stay." He raised his Glock and fired. The first operative dropped. The second ducked behind a Humvee. Then, a sound Liam would remember until the day he died. From the cages, a single bark rang out. Then another, and another. The dogs were howling. Not in fear, in challenge. The remaining operatives hesitated. Liam didn't. He fired until his magazine ran dry, then scooped Kaiser into his arms and ran for the tree line, the chorus of barks covering their retreat. Behind them, metal groaned as the first cage door gave way. Then the second. Then the third. Kaiser lifted his head from Liam's arms, his blind eyes turned back toward the facility, and smiled. The bullet had shattered Kaiser's shoulder blade, missing his lungs by less than an inch. For 3 days, he hovered between life and death in the emergency veterinary clinic, his breathing shallow, his body racked with fever. Liam never left his side. He slept in the hard plastic chair beside Kaiser's cage, his fingers perpetually threaded through the bars, resting on the dog's paw. Every time Kaiser whimpered, Liam's stomach clenched like a fist. On the 4th morning, when Kaiser finally lifted his head and licked Liam's calloused fingers, the vet techs cried. The news vans arrived that afternoon. At first, Liam refused to speak to them. He'd spent too many years in the shadows to trust the spotlight. But then the first story broke. Blind military dog takes down private security firm. And the world caught fire. Emails poured in from former Blackthorn employees, whistleblowers, families of handlers who'd disappeared. By the end of the week, the FBI had raided 6 Blackthorn facilities, freeing over 60 dogs with the same surgical scars as Kaiser. Liam watched the footage on the waiting room TV, Kaiser's head heavy in his lap. The dogs stumbled into the sunlight, blinking and trembling, their tails tucked between their legs. Just like Kaiser had been. That's when he knew what he had to do. Kaiser's haven rose from the ashes of an abandoned ranch just outside Missoula. Liam used his back pay from the military to buy the land, then partnered with Claire Thompson, the vet who'd saved Kaiser, to design something revolutionary. No cages, no concrete runs, just wide pastures bordered by gentle fences, where dogs could relearn how to be dogs, where they could heal at their own pace. The first arrivals were the survivors from Blackthorn, a Malinois named Ghost, who flinched at the sound of zippers, a Dutch shepherd called Phoenix, who wouldn't eat unless someone sat beside her. And then there was Rex, a massive German shepherd with one blue eye and a gouged-out socket, where the other should have been. When Rex saw Kaiser, something remarkable happened. The 2 dogs circled each other slowly, noses twitching. Then Rex ducked his head and whined, a sound of recognition. Kaiser responded by pressing his forehead against Rex's, their breath mingling. Claire's clipboard clattered to the ground. They know each other. Liam didn't trust himself to speak. The media called it the miracle in Montana. Donations poured in. School children sent handmade cards. Veterans showed up by the dozen, offering to volunteer. But the real miracle happened on a crisp autumn morning, exactly 1 year after the auction. Liam brought Kaiser back to the barn where it had all begun. The place had been transformed. Fresh paint, new rafters, a bright red sign over the door that read, "Second chances start here." A crowd had gathered, But Liam only had eyes for one person. Sarah, the widow of the handler who'd first tried to expose Blackthorn. She held a folded flag in her arms, her husband's. "Ready, boy?" Liam murmured, smoothing Kaiser's service vest. The dog's shoulder had healed with a slight hitch in his gait, but his posture was straight, his head high. Kaiser nudged Liam's palm with his nose. Always. When they stepped into the barn, the crowd fell silent. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. But Kaiser didn't react to any of it. He walked straight to the exact spot where he'd stood a year ago, his nose working the air. Then he turned, not to Liam, but to Sarah. The woman sank to her knees, the flag clutched to her chest. Kaiser approached slowly, his tail wagging in gentle sweeps. When he reached her, he pressed his face into the flag and whined. Sarah's hands shook as she buried them in his fur. "You remember him, don't you?" she whispered. "You remember Mike?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Liam's throat tightened. Then Kaiser lifted his head. His clouded eyes seemed to look right through the barn's walls, past the mountains, toward some distant horizon only he could see. His chest expanded, and he howled. The sound hit Liam like a physical force, raw and aching and triumphant all at once. It echoed off the rafters, shaking dust from the beams, carrying with it all the pain and hope of the past year. Somewhere in the distance, another dog answered. Then another, and another. By the time Kaiser finished, half the crowd was in tears. Sarah clung to him, her shoulders shaking. Liam had to look away. A reporter finally broke the silence. "Mr. Carter, what does this mean to you?" Liam gazed down at Kaiser, at the dog who'd been discarded like trash and had somehow become a beacon. He thought of the hundreds of dogs now sleeping safely at the haven, of the handlers who'd gotten justice, of Sarah finally getting closure. He cleared his throat. "It means we were wrong about them." His voice carried across the hushed barn. "These dogs were never broken. They were just waiting for someone to see what they could still do." Kaiser leaned against his leg, warm and solid, alive. And in that moment, Liam understood the truth. Some heroes don't need eyes to change the world. They just need someone to believe they can.